I'm Rich Andreski, Bureau Chief for Public Transportation at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome you to Along the Lines, a podcast series where we'll explore current issues and ideas on Connecticut's public transportation system. Welcome to another episode of Along the Lines. I'm your host, Rich Andreski from the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Today we're going to look at the economic impact that investment in public transportation can bring to our communities. Public transportation is often looked at as a vital service. It provides critical transportation for people to get to work. We also know about the quality of life and environmental benefits, taking single occupant vehicles off the road, reducing carbon emissions, and improving air quality. But there is another vital aspect to consider, the economic impact of public transportation. Connecticut DOT leveraged hundreds of millions of dollars in federal grant funding to build CT Fast Track and Hartford Line. These investments brought beautiful new stations to neighborhoods, first attracting riders, but soon drawing the attention of private sector as a nexus for development. We can see the impact of these bus and rail investments, where new developments are sprouting like blades of grass near CT Fast Track and Hartford Line stations. New brew pubs, housing, retail, and commercial space can be found in Meriden, New Britain, West Hartford, Hartford, Windsor Locks, and other communities, bringing new life and energy to local neighborhoods. We'll examine how the market is responding to the demand for housing and other amenities, and why some people may not want a car and would rather live near a transit stop. So joining me today are Chris Edge, Director of Economic Development for the town of Berlin, and Tony Valenti, partner with the Newport Realty Group. Gentlemen, welcome. So Chris, please introduce yourself to our listeners and talk to us about your role with the town as well as with the Connecticut Economic Development Association.
Thank you very much. I am the Economic Development Director with the town of Berlin. My role essentially within Town Hall is to coordinate with businesses, entrepreneurs, as well as investors to do projects in Berlin, as well as helping to expand their firms. I've been a member of CETUS for a number of years, former board member of CETUS. In Berlin itself, we've been very blessed. The state had put a large investment into our Berlin train station. We had it for many, many years, but with the new investment and the 16 or so trains per day going both north and south has brought a new excitement to our Kensington Village area, which the Berlin train station is in, as well as new investment and excitement in Berlin.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's glad you can be here with us today to talk about some exciting things happening in your community. And Tony, can you talk to us about the Newport Realty Group, a company with more than 35 years of history in residential and commercial development? What turned your attention to investment opportunity along the Hartford Line?
There's not many land parcels that become available that are located in dynamic markets such as Berlin, and especially, and even more importantly, located next to or adjacent to and connected to the new Berlin train station. So for us, we saw an opportunity to bring together, what we do every day for a living, which is, ground up development. Leveraging our expertise and knowledge in that particular segment and market, and then using the Berlin train station, the new Berlin train station in the town of Berlin as kind of the vehicle to help us launch, another one of our projects.
Chris, maybe you could start out and just talk a little bit about how your thinking evolved on this and how you were able to build some sense of trust between you and Newport Realty Group.
Absolutely. About 7 or 8 years ago in the town of Berlin, the community had looked to put a police station by the train station. At that point, it was turned down by both the voters and by the Common Council. At that point, myself and my predecessor had sat down, presented a concept to the town council, which is to go through an RFQ process. We had seen mixed use become a norm in many other communities. We had seen with the coming of the new Berlin train station, the renovations and the investment, that this could be an opportunity for the town. We had gone through probably about a 6 to 8 month process of going through not just the submissions, but doing public outreach, talking to leadership within Town Hall, talking to residents, talking to folks on the entire spectrum from young families to folks who live their entire life who will probably retire here in Berlin, and the decision was made to partner with Newport Realty Group. And that really started the process at that point of really creating the relationship. And I think maybe Tony can pop in now on kind of what, from his standpoint, how it worked, and then I can add after that, because I think it is a very interesting story.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for the introduction on kind of how we've come together, using that request for quote as kind of the avenue to become involved in this particular project. The partnership that's been forged between a private entity such as ours, along with the town of Berlin, and we cannot forget about the contribution, both time and financially, that the state of Connecticut has been involved with to help get this project launched as well. And when I say the state of Connecticut's involvement, there's some brownfields work that had to be done to clean up some environmental matters on a couple of the parcels, as well as a variety of other types of grants that were used to help, for example, develop the boulevard, the large entry road that helped us get into the development from Farmington Avenue. So for us, it was kind of a natural and easy fit to, and this is not a cliche, it's an accurate, point that, we're able to truly partner with the town. And, the town's nimbleness from signing or submitting an RFQ and actually starting to build a building in about 3 weeks will be in the ground, pretty impressive in all parts.
Tony, a really exciting project, and we're all looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. Just for our listeners, brownfields are those properties that had a former industrial use and may have been fallow and not developed. Yeah, putting these properties back into productive use is really essential. So I'm curious if either of you could speak to, how the proximity to the train station, the Hartford Line Berlin station, shaped your thinking about this development proposal?
There are not many 3-acre, clean, flat, ready to go parcels available in Connecticut anymore. So to answer your quick question about the brownfields, one of the parcels is affected. There was a factory on the site, like a lot of sites in Connecticut, that that released chemicals and other things into the ground that needed to be cleaned up. But we're kind of used to that. We have to navigate through those things for these good parcels. What drew us to this train station, to the Berlin train station site, and this transit-oriented development project is, we did see about 3 acres of available land adjacent to a train station where we can kind of do our thing and build our buildings. But we also own other properties in the town of Berlin, and a couple that are also adjacent to the train station that are mixed use buildings, which means there's residential apartments as well as some commercial spaces in the building. And we purchased those buildings a year or so ago, and we quickly saw that we have residential tenants in this building that use the train station. They use the train on a regular basis to commute either to Windsor Locks. We have one of our tenants, and there's 2 additional that commute not on a regular basis, but when they have to go to their offices, to New Haven as well as New York. So we actually see it happening in Berlin specifically. So that's helped us cement our strategy that we do see an opportunity. Granted, COVID from a short-term perspective has negatively impacted ridership. We see that just by doing basic car counts in the parking lot of the train station. But it's short-term that we know that's going to come back.
Chris, over to you. I mean, in terms of that proximity to the train station, how did that shape the town's thinking about what it wanted to see take place on this site? And to what extent was there an adjustment in the traditional development guidelines that may have been imposed if this was a more highway-oriented development?
We actually looked at this realizing the opportunity was there. This property literally shares a property line with the train station parking lot. So this is literally transit oriented. I think when we looked at this both as a community but also as a state, and the reason I mention as a state is Tony had mentioned the brownfield on part of the property. We have funding from DECD, Economic Development Department, State Economic Development. We had worked with the folks from Environment Protection with that piece of land. We'd worked with the Office of Policy and Management on some monies for the boulevard. So essentially, we've been working with 3 different state agencies through this entire process. And I want to say the state's put somewhere around $3.5 million into the area, not including the train station. So it really made sense, and the investment has been from all sides. I mean, the good thing about that is, let's say in total $4 million, town and state. Tony and Mark are coming to the project that's going to be north of $18 million, mixed use project. When this is done, we're going to have 76 market rate apartments. A good portion of them are going to be ones and studios. We're going to have about 19,000 square feet of commercial. The nice thing about that is we were able to come to the table with Newport and give them the density they needed to make it a financially viable project. If you look at this project compared to other suburban communities, it's north of 20 units an acre. That's a lot for a suburban community. But to match that, we are getting 19,000 square feet of commercial. So it feels like a very well put together development. It's not like, well, the residential's there and the commercial's way over here. We actually have one building which is going to be 16 units above 8,000 square feet of office, retail, and restaurant space. So I think we're truly blessed to have Newport, because we're getting approximately 23-24% commercial, which is 5 to 6 times as much percentage-wise than you get in many other mixed-use projects along the line.
We know that millennials and younger folks and older folks alike are looking for places that are walkable, easy to access transit and get to other places. And it's a product. I think you're delivering a product that this part of the state doesn't have a lot of. I think from my viewpoint as a public official on the transportation side, I think you're filling a huge need here, and I think you'll be hugely successful. So, can you talk a little bit about what you see as the underlying shift that's happening here? Do you see this as something that is only going to build and play out in other locations, and what, if any, are the impediments going forward to making more of this type of development happen?
Berlin is unique in many ways. And one of the interesting components of the demographics of Berlin is, and you mentioned millennials, we have a nice base of millennials in that particular market and town and the surrounding towns and market, which we know will be drawn to the development in terms of the commercial offerings, but also the residential component. But Berlin also is complemented by having an older population that clearly we see in some of our other developments and some of our other towns. We see downsizing happening daily with our business. We'll see a couple or a single older adult just is tired of their 3,000 or 2,500 square foot home in whatever market. They sell that and they go into an apartment just because it's an easier, more convenient way of life. We see a real nice base in the town of Berlin, which really mitigates our lease up, our ability to fill up our buildings. Do we see that in other communities? It's community by community and demographic by demographic. And we're not going in with a major inventory of development. We're going in with 76 apartments, which we think fits really nicely into that market.
I believe that this will continue. I think if you look at some areas outside of Berlin, where the public transit has helped push ahead development, a couple things in particular. Meriden Commons in downtown Meriden, within a short golf shot of their train station, 150 units, where they're taking a number of 1960s era housing units, big brick, it doesn't feel very formal, to create these new apartments. On Britain Columbus Commons, by the time they're done, they're going to have almost 600 units, and that's to a large degree because of the busway at the hub in New Britain. Windsor Locks, Montgomery Mill, which had been a plant for many, many years up there, they're no longer in business, and they're going to have 140 apartments in an old mill. So I think if you look at this is much more than a Berlin thing. This is being close to public transit. I think if you look at Berlin in particular, because of the interesting mix, we have our largest employers Comcast, Eversource, manufacturing, Assa Abloy, they're looking for as many young people as they can get, millennials, etc. But they also want to keep folks who have that talent to pass on. You know very well, you can't just miraculously make a toolmaker happen, but the toolmaker needs to be able to train others. I think being in the geographic center of Connecticut and having the ability to go anywhere within the Northeast within a couple hours and see loved ones is a key piece. We have an amazing, amazing community here. We have an incredible creative arts community. Our veterans are one of the strongest in town. If we have apartments that they would like to live in, I think that adds a whole new benefit to living in the town of Berlin.
I will tell you, looking around the country, in many communities, in many places, this type of development has become almost the standard. And so, what do you think? Is there a tipping point ahead for this type of development?
A lot of it breaks down to, how friendly is the community to these type of high density developments. Berlin, absolute no brainer. They get it. They understand that we have to, you know, we use our own word, which is called densify. We need to densify these properties. But on the flip side, the commerce that's created by these developments as a super byproduct, sometimes those numbers could be staggering of how they can impact the community. Just general commerce of people living in a dense area that support local, for example, that'll support all of Farmington Avenue in Berlin, which is, a nice plethora of mom and pop tenants that I know are excited to see us just because of the feet and the shoes we're going to put on the ground, with this transit-oriented development. So just to sum it up, communities have to want these developments for them to actually, realize these types of developments.
And to basically piggyback on what Tony's saying is, yes, we definitely have seen things. I mean, with the rail line and the new investment and the new train station, and then by extension, Newport Realty Group, we basically now have our first brewery that recently opened up. We have our second locally and family-owned coffee shop. The hope would be when this project is done, we have at least 2 new restaurants within the new development that Newport Realty Group is doing. My hope, and I keep putting out there, is I want to go from 2 outside patios to 7 on Farmington Avenue by the end of 2023. Because if you look at most communities pre-COVID, you see people outside, there's an excitement, you want to see what's going on and be part of it. To go back to the local side, I think the big piece is creating a relationship like the town of Berlin has with Newport Realty Group. You put the expectations on the table early, there's no surprises, you figure out where's the middle ground that makes sense. But the fact of the matter is when they're all done, hopefully 8-10 years from now, they're going to spend north of $25 million, and they're already starting to change the face of Farmington Avenue. The main reason is, 1, the train station, and 2, the fact that the town of Berlin and its residents were willing to step up and say, you know what, we like this, we're going to partner with you because we believe you can give us a product that we can all be proud of at the end.
I think that vision is so important. I mean, we talk in our circles about the opportunity to energize and reimagine a community. And I don't think that's something that everyone can do intuitively, right? They have to see it to understand it. So I think I would argue and that your success here with this project will beget other successes, and I think that's why we're so interested in following your progress. So thinking forward. What might you imagine if we were to go out 10 years in the Farmington Avenue neighborhood? What would that community look like potentially?
What do we see happening, 10 years from now? Well, I think we see, a variety of peaks and valleys just because that's how our economy works. And we can't freak out with the lows and we can't celebrate too high with the highs. We just have to keep our course steady, especially, and I'll speak to that from a development perspective. How do we see transportation, both CT Fast Track, and I'll talk about the immediate market, CT Fast Track and the Hartford line. It's one spoke of an offering that we have for this development in Berlin. It's just as important as, for example, and this may seem like a simple example, but just like providing a washer and dryer in each of our apartment units, that's a convenience, and it's actually a requirement today for upscale apartments. Well, we're gonna tout the variety of amenities that we have that we're building, along with and and probably the rail system is going to rank higher as an amenity to our tenants and to our shoppers that we think will be visiting our commercial part of the development. I'll give you a quick example. My wife and I last year, I think just as we're getting ready to purchase the Newport Center building, I was curious. I've not taken a Connecticut train in an awful long time, so we hopped on a train in Berlin and took it to New York, and I was blown away with, number one, how cheap it was, and number two, how easy and convenient it was to get to New York City. Granted, this is pre-COVID. It was last December, actually. It's just how convenient and easy it is. So I did the same thing. I hopped on a train and went up to Windsor Locks. Blown away how convenient and reasonably it was priced. So as Connecticutites, we've got to realize we've got a couple of really great transportation systems. Again, I'm speaking very specifically to Central Connecticut with what we offer, but what great systems we have that have not been fully tapped into yet.
And Rich, just a quick addition myself. Actually, last summer, I actually had gone down to D.C. and actually had gone from Berlin to New Haven, straight down to D.C., and then ended up going from Baltimore straight up to the Berlin station. So I can say for certain, above and beyond just not that going from here to the city isn't great, but to be able to make those extensions to both DC and Baltimore, to me, was huge, for the fact that it saved me a lot of time, energy, and driving. That to me was a great benefit.
Chris, one of the reasons we had you on the program was that your experience is not just limited to the town of Berlin, but you have an important role with CEDAS, the Connecticut Economic Development Association. So I'm wondering if we can sort of zoom out, go up to a 30,000-foot overview here and talk about, beyond Berlin. Where do you see the opportunities happening in Connecticut?
The realization is, and the reality is, if you look at the people coming from New York City, I think we're going to have more people looking at Connecticut because we're seen as a welcoming state, exciting downtowns, a lot going on, and that nice mix like we have in Berlin. Millennials, families, empty nesters, where you can have numerous things you can do, food, restaurants, attractions, and it's really having your community be out there, having the discussions.
We're often asked to explain how we deliver value in public transportation. And there are two statistics that everyone likes to use. One is, well, how are you doing financially? What is the bottom line? Meaning, how much are you investing in service and how much are you getting back in fare revenue? And the second is, how many riders are in those seats? How many people are using that service? And I would argue there are other metrics that we need to be using, and that is the total return on investment. So the idea that we invest in public transportation, it's not just the expense of the service and the revenue we collect, but it's what private sector investment is happening as a result of the public sector investments in transit. So you'll definitely be seeing us using the Berlin Station project as a development project as an example. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I mean, this has been a fascinating discussion. I think we are going to see great things happening in Berlin going forward. We're looking forward to hearing more and being there for the ribbon cutting. When can we expect to gather for that ribbon cutting?
Our first building, which is it's a mixed-use building, 16 apartments and about 8,000 square feet of commercial space. We should have that open and ready for occupancy fall of 2021. Let's hope we have a winter as mild as last year's winter, so we have no delays with construction. But our first building, we'll be ready next fall. And once we finish our first couple of buildings, our path is, and we're financed just to keep going with the next next segments of the development.
Tony and Chris, congratulations on your success. Thanks for joining me today on this podcast, Along the Lines. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing us to do this.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and thank you.
Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Along the Lines. This is your host, Rich Andreski. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe and share.